This is the WORKPRO 600 watt high volume low pressure paint sprayer. I was sent this to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, MSRP is about $50. I've seen it online in the range of $36 to $40. They haven't paid me for my review, and my opinion remains my own. Alright, so in the package we get the main body of the sprayer itself. We have the spray nozzle with trigger assembly, and we have the tank. We also have some paint funnels here, which will strain out any chunks, and some other accessories with nozzles and so forth. There's a warning sticker on the top that says, hey, make sure you read these instructions before you try using it. Alright, so operation is pretty simple. This guy is basically a big fan. When the switch gets pushed, the fan turns on. Now also, when you pull the trigger and push that fan switch, this little needle inside of the nozzle pulls back, and that'll let paint come out of the nozzle. You might notice there's a black, white, red, and blue nozzle, and they have different orifices or different sizes there. And then this guy goes on top and can adjust the spray if it's going to be horizontal or vertical. Now, this is your DIN measuring cup. Basically, you need to get the viscosity correct for it to come out of here. They say the max viscosity is 120 DIN seconds, but if you try spraying something at 120 DIN seconds, it may or may not work super well. The blue nozzle is the 90 to 120 DIN seconds nozzle. This red guy is 70 to 100. The black guy is 40 to 70, and then the black guy's already installed there. And then the white one is 10 to 40 DIN seconds. They also have a table here that says things like, well, check the, instructions that come with your particular paint. But they're basically saying, for most of these paints and primers, they're recommending kind of 25 to 30, 15 to 30, 20 to 25. The only thing that they say is undiluted would be wood preservatives, stains, or oils, or disinfectants. So if you have a really thin, liquidy stain, when you put this cup in and lift it out, it's probably going to be in that 10 to 25 second range anyways. Most of your paints, when you put them in this, need to be diluted down to a set range to work well with the air sprayer. Alright, if you're going to be spraying things on the ground or things that are horizontally, you want this tube facing forward, so when you tilt it down slightly, most of the paint goes to that side. If you're spraying overhead like a ceiling, you want to tilt it back so that the paint that's dripping down here into your cup here will get to that guy there. So to adjust how much paint comes out, you basically turn this guy, which controls exactly how far back that needle can pull. Now this guy can rotate to do kind of a vertical spray or a horizontal spray. They say that if you go at a 45-degree angle, it'll do just a dot. I think that's because it turns off these two and those four are running. Little arrow lines up to insert it, and then that arrow, when you flip it all the way down, means it's locked. You can see here how this guy turns on the blower and then it starts to release paint. And if you adjust this knob out, it will limit how far back the trigger can go, so it stops the trigger a little bit early. All right, let's take a look at the watt draw. Alright, looks like it draws pretty consistently, 450 watts. So this guy makes a lot of noise and blows a lot of air. Material quality, fit and finish. Obviously it's all plastic construction. Most of these plastic bits feel quite rigid and strong, so this guy here, I cannot make that bend by, squeezing it with my fingers. So this guy here, it has four little legs that hold that centerpiece in, but I can't move the centerpiece with my finger when I'm pushing on it. So it feels pretty strong. This guy here, I think, is kind of the thinnest piece of plastic, and I can kind of barely dent that by squeezing with my fingers. But it feels pretty heavy. It also feels like it's, you know, designed to be a little soft and giving, so that if it falls, it's less likely to crack. So I think it's more resiliency, be soft so that it doesn't crack. So this guy spins around inside there. It has these two little built-in plastic wings that kind of act as springs, and they feel pretty sturdy. So it's a pretty hard plastic. Those are pretty thin pieces, but it feels quite strong there. So at the price point, it feels pretty well put together because it is on the less expensive side of the market. All right, so normally you're supposed to dip this, but I'm just going to pour 1001, 1002, 1003. Whew, might be a problem with viscosity there. I saw a couple of lumps going in. And that's why you're supposed to use the little paper funnels they provide to funnel this stuff. So yeah, I'm not sure if this wood stain is low enough viscosity or not. There's some definite lumping and thumping going on in there. Alright, the back of the container says shake well, which I did. It says do not thin. I haven't tried. So supposedly this stuff's supposed to work, but it's sure not flowing through the straining paper very well. This is why they say to put a piece of paper on the ground and do this over the piece of paper. Alright, I have some serious concerns about the 5-year-old stain, so I am moving up to the largest nozzle they provide, which is the blue nozzle, which has the biggest hole. We're going to hope that works with this stain that's been sitting in the can for 5 years. I've also adjusted this knob to give me the maximum paint flow. I can always do less later. Alright, I initially did not paint these little corner supports because I wanted some visual interest, but now the wood's just starting to look old, so I'm going to stain them and see how it works. Well, there's a lot of overspray, but it's working pretty well. I think I might have been okay with a smaller nozzle. Alright, this is the only place I really have to worry about overspray that much. And running out of stain in my container. Alright, I'm just about done with all of my extra stain, so we're just going to do this board here and call it good. Alright, I had definite concerns about the age of my stain and the viscosity, but putting that large nozzle in there, I don't even think I needed to do that. It was really coming out. So, you know, that thing really threw the stain out. Now, there's lots of overspray. You know, my hand has a lot of dots. This entire, you know, spray gun has the stain little dots all over it. You know, and that might be because I had the extra big nozzle. It might just be because it's a high volume spray gun, but it, you know, made quick work of what I was doing here. I basically just ran out of stain before I ran out of wood. All right, I filled this up with water. We're just going to blow a lot of water through here. Alright, so I took off these end bits and we're just going to wash those again. So they include a cleaning brush, and it's too big to fit through the point of the nozzle. They have a little pin you can go through some of the smaller nozzles. It'll go through this guy, but it doesn't really quite fit into these holes too well. So maybe it's for the tube that goes up into the thing, although I sprayed all that out with the water. So this brush isn't quite the right size for a lot of these parts. Alright, so I was pretty impressed with that guy. Despite the fact that my stain was like 5 years old and looked to be quite thick, I moved up to the blue nozzle. I don't even think I really needed to do that. I think it would have handled it with a smaller, nozzle for the stain. Put out a lot of stain pretty darn quick. I spent more time cleaning up and setting up than I did spraying anything. Worked just fine. Obviously, once you use this, there's going to be spray on pretty much everything, but the business parts were pretty easy just to clean up. I just, sprayed water through them. So the price point is right, the time savings, not having to use a brush, especially if you're doing something big, is really going to pay for itself here.